So Challengers is the movie that I just haven't been able to stop thinking about, other than I Saw the TV Glow, which is in theaters now if you're lucky enough, but I have gushed about that one a lot already, so today, Challengers. I have ventured out to the theater to watch this multiple times. I've watched it at home multiple times. That score just gets me going, and I pick out something new almost every time I watch the movie. It is the latest movie by director Luca Guadagnino, who has one of the weirdest career track records. Like most recently, he did the cannibal love story Bones and All, based on a book of the same title, which I have covered here on this channel. I'd say he's probably most known for Call Me By Your Name, but he also did the Suspiria remake. Very interesting director, and now he's taken on the sport thriller drama thing and still managed to make it so incredibly horny. And that's without ever really showing anything. Like, there are some overt moments in the script that are actually removed from the movie. It's just put to screen with such blatant lust and intimacy without ever showing anything, even under the covers. I know a lot of people who thought this was just gonna be a movie full of threesomes, and kinda, but not the way you're thinking. Spoiler-free rundown is that three people become inescapably connected through tennis while Tashi is trying to get Art's confidence back in the game before the US Open at a challenger event where he finds himself face-to-face with his former best friend and greatest rival. Definitely a love triangle energy going on here, made all the more interesting when you find out that the screenplay was written by Justin Kuritzkes, notably married to Celine Song, who wrote and directed Past Lives. Yeah, Challengers was written by the dude that this guy is loosely based on. What a power couple though, because these were both of their first feature film outings in the world. Just absolutely wild. And as great a tennis movie as this is, Challengers is ultimately about desire and wanting the things that other people don't want to give you. It's messy as hell. There's no solid heroes or villains, just people doing the wrong thing at different points in life. And people, including the actors, still aren't really sure if it's love, lust, or hate that are bringing these people together. So let's dive into the movie before getting into that ending that people either seem to love or hate, and the mess that gets us there. But first, once again, this video is brought to you by you, my lovely Patreon supporters and YouTube channel members. But even if you're not one of those people, being subscribed is always more than enough. And if you end up enjoying the video, consider subscribing for more content like this. Now, I know that some people actually found the way this movie was told to be annoying, but I adored it. It really does just feel like it's going back and forth like a tennis match at every level, in conversations, in time, as they're showing us the events that get us to where we are now. And where we are now is the New Rochelle Challengers Tournament, which friends of the channel, or at least who I consider to be my friends, Super Yaki, currently have some merch available for. Definitely better than the $400 I told you shirt. But before we even visually get here, something else I love that this movie does is that it starts before you even get the MGM logo on screen. The first thing we get is a close-up on all their faces, sweat dripping while Zendaya looks on in intensity. It's almost like a YouTube video where they give you like a little taste of the really exciting thing to come at the beginning, because that is from the final scene of this movie. It also reminded me of something else I've read that I find myself agreeing with, that this movie oftentimes feels like a live-action anime. Not fully, and not in a diminishing way. The movie still feels very real with real people and struggles, but apparently the screenwriter even mentioned that it was kind of like a tennis anime movie in a Q&A in New York. If you've never watched anime or an anime that includes sports, you may not see it, but it is kind of undeniable when you start to think about it. Some real haiku moments here. And it doesn't feel like a live-action anime in the same way that something like the Speed Racer movie does, just in how it kind of like flows, the snappy back and forth, the intense music that sparks up the second someone gets the upper hand, either in a match or a conversation, because in this, they're the same thing. The only thing really missing from that is really intense inner monologuing. Like, the New Rochelle might as well have been Light versus L.
I can see the wheels turning, Light Yagami. I'm already in your head.
And we pick up a lot with this movie very quickly. We're in the finals of this tournament, and there seems to be so much unspoken going on between these three people. The fantastic Reznor and Ross score kicking in as we zoom in on Zendaya's face dead center. Before cutting us back 2 weeks ago to Art and Tashi, power couple to the outside world, but maybe not the most satisfied in life currently. We're very quickly shown that she's suffered an injury that stopped her tennis career, so now she's his coach and manager. And while he's been pretty dominant with her help following his own injury, he hasn't been able to get back on his game in the US Open. The last thing he needs for his Grand Slam title is right around the corner. The passion has literally been sucked right out of him, to the point that he starts losing easy matchups against kids that are terrified of him.
And there goes the racket.
He was playing really well.
And his lack of passion and unwillingness to try is making her increasingly cold with him and thinks the solution to his confidence might be putting him in a challengers tournament. Which, as exciting as that would be for a spectator, that would be like if Kobe Bryant moved down to like the NBA G League for a confidence boost, or like when pro gamers make Smurf accounts so that they don't have to play against people that are actually their level. But their relationship has a very weird dynamic. You get the feeling that tennis is this thing that's brought them together, and he's just now desperate for a hint of intimacy that's outside that, but she just kind of starts hitting him with the Han Solo.
I love you.
I know. You feel the exasperation. She resents that he's not taking advantage of how well he healed when her injury took her out forever. Which is when we cut to Patrick night before the tournament, who's not even able to cover his own hotel room and clearly bothered that this woman doesn't care or know who he is. The one thing he has going for him is that he's just so incredibly confident in all areas of his life, so he's pretty sure he's going to be winning that tournament until he sees who made a last-minute entry. And it's not because he thinks he's going to lose out on this prize money to a real serious pro, it's because they have history. Cutting us back 13 years when they were the best of friends, double partners with a ton of style. Man, that felt like 3D in theaters. There's a lot of shots in this that are 100% like a fake tennis ball, but I don't care, it's effective. The script makes special note to point out their unique styles here, which earns them the nickname Fire and Ice, which you can also kind of go on to apply to their general personalities in life. Art is Ice, who plays clean and beautiful, but Patrick is Fire as a force of nature, just pulling off these near impossible shots. And they truly love each other, like maybe a little bit more than best friends in some ways. The scripts really make sure to emphasize that it's best friends. But something that the movie does seem to change up from the script, and not that there's a lot of conversations outside the three of them, but the movie, almost all the dialogue is just limited to one of them talking to one of the other ones or the three of them together. It is very rare for anyone else to ever be involved. And I genuinely think it's mostly Patrick. Now, even though they are each amazing players in their own right, Art has no false belief that he can beat Patrick in their match the next day and actually asks him to make it look like less of a domination because his grandmother will be watching.
Don't guilt me with your dying grandmother.
Remember that detail. And Patrick doesn't even really care to win right now because he doesn't think it matters until they meet Tashi Duncan, top tennis prodigy, absolute monster on the court at her Adidas party. An event Art wasn't even going to attend, but after seeing her match, they both show up to try to pick her up. And she's kind of this perfect mix of both of them. She has the precision and the skill matched with the creativity and the dominance. I also just got to point out the thigh grab when she gets a really good hit during the match and the script saying their boners are just steadily rising while they watch. Tennis is the sex of this movie. And their conversation at the party really just kind of hones in on who they are. She can tell that they both want her number and she's very down to have some fun with that fact. Art has a lot less confidence, so he's just trying to get these compliments and questions in where he can, but Patrick is just way more forward and outgoing, very flirty, but also mildly antagonistic about her plans to go to Stanford first before getting a little too real with his assessments, but also hurting Art in the process because he's going to Stanford before trying to go pro. But she can match that energy in Patrick and starts pointing out his greatest flaws, that people don't want to coach him with better habits because they're afraid to mess with his magic, and now he's not like receptive to any of that.
That's why you still have that serve.
It works.
The movie does end up adding in an entire conversation about how tennis is like a relationship, and I don't think they needed to be that on the nose with it because the movie absolutely makes that clear. But it also adds in the infamous hotel scene where she takes that fun to the next level. She gets them both kissing her before pulling back so they're only kissing each other like a real-life little yaoi fanfiction writer. She's puppeting her little characters for her perversions, and she's having a great time with it. Literally like little kids who are like now kiss with their dolls. And this is after she's asked if they've ever done anything together because of how close they are. And their reactions here are very interesting because Patrick's like, well, you know, maybe like a little bit, and Art's just kind of like, absolutely not, never. Honestly, they'll never put it past Luca to add in some uncomfortable masturbation dynamic, but thankfully not a damn peach in sight here, just a story about how Patrick taught Art to jerk off when they were teens while they both thought of the same girl.
Well, whatever happened to her, you guys?
She got injured a week later and had to quit.
Foreshadowing! But even though most people are just going to bring this back to the makeout session, that's obviously the standout moment in this scene, this whole moment really does just reveal who they are as people. Art and Patrick come from very well-off to plain wealthy families and went to a tennis boarding school their entire adolescence, bunkmates since they were 12, paid to have the best training and opportunities. Where Tashi had none of that, and Patrick actually seems shocked that she said her family wouldn't have had the money to send her somewhere like that, or that she's managed to be so good with without that level of access? Like, at some point, what's your excuse for just coasting on your natural talent? But because she doesn't want to be a homewrecker, she won't give her number to either of them directly, but after some prodding, she says that she just wants to see some great tennis, so whoever wins the match tomorrow can have her number. So Patrick's deal to let Art win goes right out the window.
What about my grandmother? I hope she has a fucking stroke.
And yeah, despite his desperate efforts and Tashi even saying that he should beat Patrick in a fight, Art gets hit with that same move that won them the doubles match after Patrick was already running him around the court. And I just love how the movie cuts from him looking so defeated, her watching them, to the present match of him once again struggling to gain traction against Patrick, but barely putting in any effort this time, and her looking on so sick over it. But things clearly didn't work out for Patrick either, because they obviously didn't last long term. He's got $70 to his name, a cracked screen, and he's using Tinder to find a place to stay, even though we know his family's loaded. Earlier, when they're walking to the beach, Art points out that Patrick's parents' place is bigger than this castle they're having the party at, so it kind of seems like Patrick's just doing some poverty tourism here, trying to make it on his own when a safety net is always going to be there. No shade for him trying to make it on his own. That is admirable to actually commit to it to the point that you only have $70 to your name, but like, he's been doing this for 13 years now. I also feel like this scene confirms that Patrick is mostly openly bi, mild hesitation before swiping on the dude, but still goes down for it, meaning his interests are set for both. You could say it's just out of desperation for a place to stay, but I get the most homoerotic vibes out of Patrick. And I genuinely believe that he probably loves Art a little bit more than a best friend. But before we even get to see what happens between Patrick and Tashi all those years ago, he runs into her at the hotel. And she just seems disgusted by him, genuinely angry. They clearly haven't kept in touch. He thinks she's doing all this to mess with Art because she would have had to seen he was on the competitor list, but she's really just hoping that this will snap Art back in, and then we swing back to why they don't talk anymore. We cut to Art trying to figure out if Patrick and her slept together after he got the number, and wants Patrick to let him know by doing his weird serve tick of putting the ball in the racket hole, something they've already shown us. Which of course he does because he has, and it seems light and fun at first, but Art's clearly upset. The script even says that his emotion flips to hatred as Patrick turns away, and thus begins his plan to pull them apart. I really do love how each stage of this movie has the past reflect itself with moments of the present, showing us who has the upper hand in different stages of their life and in this present day match. Patrick being ahead currently and eating his banana in the cockiest way possible. But Tashi pointed out that Patrick has a tendency to lose it in the second round, which is what we're about to fall into, which will again be reflected in the past. Because back in college, Art is starting to plant the seeds of doubt like Emperor Palpatine and a young Anakin Skywalker about their relationship. Talking about how he's surprised that she and Patrick are still together, letting her think he might be seeing other girls, that he's not in love with her, and that she should care about that because she deserves it. We've got a fake nice guy on our hands here, guys. We got a fake nice guy here trying to manipulate the situation. Ooh, woo, queen, I am so much better for you than my best friend who is goofy. I mean, who wouldn't be in love with you? You should be with someone like me.
I think you might be the worst friend in the world.
Maybe.
Truly. Not that Patrick would know about being a worse friend. He shows up to visit her and goes to see Art first, because that's his boy. For now. Which brings us to the most homoerotic moment of the movie, the churro scene. Yeah, somehow I think the churro scene is more intimate than them actually making out. That slick little chair pull before Art sits down so they're closer, the full bromance, they're all up in each other's faces. It really makes perfect sense that Josh O'Connor kept mentioning Superbad on the press tour. They're fighting about the same girl, but doing it via flirting with one another. But before Art even sits down, he can see that Patrick is looking at the Tashi Duncan poster and he seems upset. I think Patrick really thought his style and flair would launch him through the pros quickly, and that hasn't been the case, so even at a college level, Tashi's outshining him. And Art plans to use that. He downplays their relationship, makes Patrick feel like Tashi doesn't care, but Patrick instantly knows that Art's trying to snake him. Like his games of percentage tennis, just waiting for Patrick to screw up enough to get in there, and even thinks it's cute. Just another fun little dynamic to their friendship.
I'm proud of you. I've been doing the same thing.
I'm not doing anything.
Literally says it's the kind of behavior that's missing from his tennis, that desire to win. He just wants to see Art lit up about something. And this, my friends, is why I think that for a large part of this movie, Art is the bad guy, and when you start blaming other people for events that happen, even though it's not necessarily their fault, Art is the catalyst in a lot of these situations. But even if Patrick caught that snaking, there's still a lot of insecurity in the relationship. He and Tashi almost instantly get into a fight. She thinks she's being flirty after Patrick brings up what Art's been up to, trying to give him some game pointers, but Patrick's getting his ego hurt. She starts saying he always thinks he's won before the match is over, and she does mean in tennis, but he's wondering if she also means in real life.
Were we talking about tennis?
We're always talking about tennis.
Can we not?
And he's not interested in a tennis conversation right now and doesn't want pointers from her, which just kind of shuts it down on her end. She wants to make him better and he wants her to see them as peers. A bit of an ego battle where she's frustrated that he won't take any advice and just complains about the same things over and over again, and him not thinking he needs any coaching from her.
I'm not some fucking lapdog who's gonna sit around and let you punish me. I'm not Art.
And as icy as she is in present day, Patrick fires her up. She is genuinely upset when he leaves, and to be fair, she did say some kind of hurtful things, like if he sucked at tennis, it would be embarrassing for her. But because she's upset, she starts taking that out in the match. No longer is it a relationship dance between her and her partner, she is doing a dance with someone who's not even here to have that reflected at him, which leads to a miscalculation. And while I knew an injury was coming, I didn't think it was gonna be this early on, but yeah, that knee popped like my last brain cell, damn! So that puts an end to all interactions with Patrick from both of them and an end to Tashi's career. So now that we've seen Patrick shook in the past, we see him shook in the present during the finals. He's losing points for behavior, Art getting more confident with every serve, which means we have to cut back to the past where Art gets the upper hand, and it's not immediate, which you may have thought. It actually takes like 3 years for them to rekindle anything. Art's working his way into the pros and wants her on his coaching team so he can win the things that Patrick's ego wouldn't let him accept. And still, after all these years, he's pulling the "who wouldn't be in love with you" move. But now it works, because she set him up for it. He says he's just worried about being the worst friend in the world for wanting to kiss her, and she just responds, to who? Her or Patrick, because Patrick's not around. The script actually takes it into a scene where she has to like coach him into calming down while kind of giving him a handy so he can perform. The movie cuts that all out. It still ends up being and feeling so intimate and horny as a movie, but you really just don't see anything. Like the tennis, again, is the sex. Like, listen to Art's hit noises. The movie brings us back to Patrick the day before their finals, again approaching her at the hotel with a proposition. He wants her to coach him for his final year, the thing he wouldn't even accept for free all those years ago. That getting Art a Grand Slam won't even feel like an achievement, but him, that's a legacy. And she is disgusted.
What do you think?
How fucking dare you? 271st best in the fucking
Still
world.
have a shot.
You have a better shot with a handgun in your mouth.
Damn! But as usual, Patrick just sees a little bit deeper into what's going on with her and knows that Art losing his passion is leading her to kind of hate him. That if it wasn't for her, he'd probably already be retired. But this is all they've ever had as a couple. She's been codependently living through him because she can't play anymore and he's hit a wall.
Who is he to you if he's not playing tennis?
And pointing out that if Art loses to him again, it might break him.
It won't make you. Okay, it's too late for that.
Zendaya on multiple occasions has called this codependency the movie, and it is so clear each of these people need one another for something. They're all trying to get something out of life from these other people that they can't get on their own. And when they were younger, there was more of a spark and a magic to it, and now they just can't get that back because you can't actually live for or through other people. Or at least the way they're doing it, they can't do it when they're not a unit. And then he alludes to something that may have happened between him and Tashi in Atlanta.
You think I came here for you? I have seen you. You look like shit.
And she leaves, but not before taking his number, while he also goes back for the cigarette she slapped out of his mouth. The details. Which brings us to the first conversation that Art and Patrick have had since the accident in the sauna, literal big dicking around. And Patrick's trying to be cute, wants to know why Art's still so angry, thinks it might be because Tashi wanted him first.
When we were teenagers.
When we were teenagers.
Very suggestive delivery there because, yeah, not just when they were teenagers. What happened in Atlanta all those years ago, other than Patrick still wearing Tashi's shirt and instantly making Art perform better, is Patrick and Tashi hooking up. He stumbles on her drunk at a hotel bar while she's watching event coverage of the girl she beat so badly the day they all met, now at the top of the pros, everything Tashi should have been. Before he clocks her engagement ring, which she very dejectedly comments that it was Art's grandmother's who died of a stroke.
What about my grandmother?
I hope she has a fucking stroke.
You know, the one he used to try to get Patrick to throw the match that day? Seems like he might have used her death to get engaged. Not that Tashi doesn't love Art, it's just a matter of how she loves him, and that this probably made her realize where she's ended up compared to where she should have been. Not could have been, should have been. And they start viciously making out before cutting back to Patrick's shit-eating grin, knowing it's more than just when they were teenager, which Art definitely realizes.
You're right. I do find it disturbing.
There's no need, man.
Because he saw them at that table in Atlanta, not the kiss they ended up sharing because someone asked him for an autograph and they were gone by the time he turned around. But it doesn't give Patrick the advantage in the present. Patrick rightfully points out how embarrassing it is for Art to even be at this Challenger, but Art spins it different.
I'm just stopping by, man. This is where you live.
And then that music just rips in as Art points out all the failures in Patrick's life, that they haven't been peers in a decade. Something we know Patrick has a complex about.
This is a game about winning the points that matter.
I don't matter.
Blatantly saying that Patrick doesn't matter. Now again, all this is technically a conversation about tennis, but we know that tennis is going to apply to every aspect of their lives, and Patrick is absolutely applying it to his.
I wanted to say that I'm looking forward to it. Now I miss playing with you.
Which I think is true in every sense of the word. But a lot of this ends up feeling like a show from Art. He may feel like he won the point that mattered by getting Tashi, but it's not necessarily in the way that he wanted it to be because he can't be what she needs him to be anymore. And she actually kind of hates that the only reason he's doing this is because he feels like he's playing for both of them, like he owes it to her. She wants the passion, she wants good fucking tennis, she wants it to matter to him. Which is why when he keeps asking if it matters if he wins tomorrow, she can't give him an answer.
I'm just asking that you love me no matter what.
What am I, Jesus?
Yeah.
To him, she is that big, but he just can't do it for her anymore, and she doesn't want it to be that way, but he's decided that he wants to quit whether he wins the Open or not. And then just keeps pushing her to get some kind of answer on the match until she finally says she'll leave him if he loses.
I'm serious. Does that help you?
I think a lot of people took that as a sincere statement that she's always wanted to say, and maybe she did mean it once she did say it, but it really was because he was hounding her for something, just some motivation to care. This whole conversation is actually making her very uneasy because she's starting to think that Patrick might be right. Losing this match might break Art. So she goes to ask Patrick to lose it. Before we hear that though, we cut back to the final match a couple times, once where Art actually pulls ahead, but Patrick is just smiling at him as he walks by, which is very confusing. Now at first I assumed that was because he was actually throwing the match and smirking because Art doesn't know, and some of that probably is, but I think it goes back to the Stanford conversation. Patrick wants to see Art lit up. He wants to see Art care just as much as Tashi does. He wants to have a good match with his friend, and he hates that Tashi thinks that him throwing the match is how to do it.
I can't believe you do this to him. Fucking me would be one thing, but this is unforgivable.
And yeah, regardless of intent, it's kind of a horrible thing to do to him. If he ever found out, it would wreck him potentially even more than them hooking up in Atlanta. And I genuinely love the commitment in adulthood with how icy she is with Art and fiery she is with Patrick.
I'm taking such good care of my little white boys.
And just the genuine exasperation of managing emotions. Not condoning this hate fuck behavior I'm currently witnessing, her literally saying, hey, I didn't come here for a car quickie, but if that's what it'll take for you to throw the match, like, sure, I guess. Before going back to the match where Art starts noticing some weird eye contact between Tashi and Patrick. How Tashi's suddenly looking very broken instead of her usual death stare or encouragement. And that's because she's waiting to see if Patrick's actually gonna commit to his word because it cuts back to him agreeing to lose. But even with that, they so quickly ramp up into anger, she spits in his face and they immediately start making out. You know, whatever gets you going, I guess. I do gotta say, the one touch I loved is that they're making out with a giant Aston Martin billboard as their backdrop. It's just the little touches, you know? And they do completely hook up in the back of that CRV, even though he's already promised to throw the match, but there is a very real reality that he could change his mind in the moment. Her actions that night made all the worse by coming home to her husband, who's now sleeping next to their daughter, who probably came looking for some comfort. I know a lot of people thought that the timeline might have made it so that like their kid was actually Patrick's, but that timeline does not work based on like when Atlanta was and how old the kid is. So on top of it all, she's got a ton of guilt, obviously, but back to the tournament, Art is so close to winning, but Patrick just starts to look at Tashi, emotions swelling in and out because even he doesn't know what he's gonna do yet. Cutting to this amazing shot of Tashi dead center with them dripping sweat on either side of her. Now it's right around here where I'm waiting for him to just do the racket tick that Art has to let him know that once again he slept with Tashi. And I think Patrick's waiting to see if he's gonna do it too. Tashi won't understand the context, but she's definitely gonna know this smile means something. I'm sure some people were annoyed with how long it took him to actually do it, but I thought it was so tense. Then once it finally happens, you just cut to Art just fully getting out of position, cutting back to Patrick's, yeah buddy, you know what I did, smirk.
Fuck off!
And it's not to be a dick, it's to push Art to win authentically. To get him back in that state that had him slamming balls in Atlanta the second he showed up. So it all pushes into a tiebreak where Art plays harder than he has in God knows how many years. Lobs one at Patrick's head to send a message before they get going. And Art actually smirks at him, not because he's happy that Patrick slept with his wife, but because he finally feels it again. That spark is back, the fun of competition and desire to destroy, and he knows that's what Patrick was doing. That's not why he slept with Tashi, he did that because he wanted to, but why he is playing things the way he is now. But that's spin around to get another ball, so good, gave me some Matrix vibes. And they both all go in, playing the best tennis of their lives, risking the same moves that lost Tashi her career. And this whole scene goes all out, like we've already seen the camera attached to the racket, but now we've got the ball is the camera. We got shots from under the court, Tashi finally looking exhilarated, before Art just jumps in the air to slam down well outside his bounds, and Patrick just catches him in a hug. Crowd cheering because they know they've witnessed something special, while Tashi gives that same "come on" cheer from the beginning of the movie. This moment is the threesome. That was the climax. Tashi finally got her good fucking tennis, and these two have finally broken through a barrier they put up years before. I know some people think that Art literally won the match in this moment, but no, hitting the net is a no-no. The ball wasn't even on his side yet, and it was only the first point in the tiebreak, but this is the moment where they all win in some way, and that's what matters. Obviously, they got some stuff to work out after this, but there's a very good chance that they'll go on to be the most toxically fulfilled throuple in history. In the end, they all get something they needed. Art got his spark and passion, Tashi gets the perfect tennis match, and to see Art how she always wanted him to be, and Patrick finally has both of them back in some way, and it's all happened around this massive exhibit of the thing that brought them together. Finally getting that feeling of playing together as kids back. Luca's really focused in on the idea of a love triangle needing to touch on all sides because all pieces are connected, commenting that the root of the jealousy in a triangle isn't directed at the person you have or should have. You're jealous that you aren't being chosen and directing that at the person you're losing to. Art and Patrick spent so much time putting Tashi between them and building Tashi into something for them instead of who she was, when so much of it was just their own shit. Tashi obviously blames Patrick for her injury, but kind of has to realize that it can't really come down on him, and if it does, that means by proxy it's also Art's fault for riling that situation up. But that final moment, her cheer and them hugging, is just knowing that the match was for them, between them, as a show, just a pure display. And even to take it more specific, Art spent this entire movie just really closed in on himself, and even more so in the present, just completely compressed, and now he's broken out of that and got some of that confidence that he always would have admired out of Patrick and Tashi. And Patrick gets exactly what he wants with both of these people he's been obsessed with in one place, knowing exactly how to play the situation to get what he wants out of it and what they seem to need, and he just wants to matter. I can absolutely see why this might not be satisfying to some people. You might want a really set answer, you may want to see a confirmed throuple. I know a lot of people actually did want to see a threesome in a bed, but it was really all about getting them to this point. They've all been looking for this way to satisfy a need for one another, and this is the catalyst, not necessarily a love, but a need they all have. I do think you can argue the circle that Patrick loves Art, Art loves Tashi, and Tashi loves tennis, but as a unit, it is a need that they can't fulfill individually or as separate units. Not necessarily healthy, and I hope that this is kind of a catalyst to get them past into a point where they can just start living for themselves, but together, because it's that spark that's being reignited in all of them that really is magic to see because of how it was lost. But even being at the top of your game with something that you love as your career can so quickly come back to bite you. And if you're not happy in the thing that's supposed to be your passion, how can you be happy anywhere else? Something I'm sure a lot of people can relate to. So at the end, I'd like to think they've all taken little pieces of one another to be more complete humans. I'd like to think that Art's taken his confidence and gone on to win the US Open before retiring. That Tashi might start training Patrick to be the best he can be in the pro league, and that they all kind of work as this dysfunctional powerhouse in tennis. Let me know what you guys are thinking down below. I could talk so much about this movie. There are so many little things that you could focus in on, and I think that there's a lot of ways you can interpret this and have fun thinking about it, so I'm interested to hear your thoughts. But thank you all so much for watching, and thanks as always to my Patreon supporters and YouTube channel members. Subscribe to the channel if you're new, leave a like on the video if you're into that kind of thing. I hope you're all having a fantastic day. I'm mostly okay, and we'll catch you all later.